Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
I'm Egbert, the owner of this station. Check out my website at egbert.com. That's E-G-G-B-U-R-T, egbert.com. Now it's back to Brad and John. Check out their website at bjshow.co. The BJ Show? Come on, guys. Anyway, here's B and J.
Okay, John, I have to talk to you about something, and I need your help with a situation that I'm a little bit upset about, okay?
Okay. I'd be happy to help.
The media business is, as you can see what's happening in St. Louis, the Riverfront Times, which is still a very curious situation with the website. It's still the website frozen in time. I read the article. I don't know if you saw this or not. I can't remember where I read it. It gave a really good background of the dude that owns, at least he owned the Riverfront Times. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I wonder if this guy, I'd like to sit down and talk with this guy because he rents houses. Normally we think of like a house rental, you think of like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,400 square foot house somewhere. Yeah. Okay, this guy rents like 6, 7, 8,000 square foot homes like in Webster Groves and Ladue and places like that. Okay, so the Riverfront Times, for all intents and purposes, is gone. Okay, as of today, there's another interesting thing that's popped up. There's a big change in the radio business, and Dan Caesar is all over this, as he always is. KFNS. Yesterday was the last day for local programming on Fans 590 KFNS. Do you know about this story?
I saw that. Yeah, the Post-Dispatch had a story. Wasn't there a young guy that the gist I got was there was some young guy who tried really hard and it didn't work out? Or
yeah, his last name was Zobrist. I think his first name was Dave Zobrist, Zobrist. Okay, yep. He bought it from, what's the guy's name? Randy Markell, the guy that used to own Chuck's Boots. But he doesn't own Chuck's Boots anymore. He sold that as well, too. Okay. If you follow the history of KFNS, it has a very crazy, weird history involving some really interesting characters. I think Kevin Slayton's been there like 6 times and some other bizarre stuff. Yeah. Okay, so the media business is tough. The Post-Dispatch is having problems. We have right here in St. Louis a situation with Odyssey, which unfortunately earlier this year declared bankruptcy. Now there's a big controversy that the guy who's buying it out of bankruptcy is George Soros, and there's a big controversy with the FCC about the fact that they can't necessarily transfer the license to him because he's not an American citizen. A lot of the money came from overseas. There's all sorts of crazy controversy about how the media business is really having problems with money. Now, I preface all these things to preface to this story, which, believe it or not, I read on St. Louis Public Radio, stlpr.org. And the title of the story is St. Louis-based Gateway Pundit accused of using bankruptcy to derail defamation suits, okay? And we're talking about Jim Hoft and his brother Joe, is that who it was? Joe Hoft?
Yeah, and we covered this on Friday.
Okay. Do you know, have you heard the money they're talking about it is? Do you know what I'm talking about?
But what he's being sued for millions, right?
Well, yeah, but here's what's interesting. It talks about, according to Business Insider, I'll just read this exactly off the stlpr.org site. According to Business Insider, Jim Hoft admitted at a June 17th hearing in the bankruptcy case that he used the company to give himself an $800,000 loan to purchase a condo in 2021 in Jensen Beach, Florida, okay? According to court filings, none of that loan has been repaid. Gateway Pundit, doing business as TGP Communications, LLC, also owns a 2021 Porsche Cayenne worth about $54,000. Hoff said during the hearing he used it as a company car. Hoff receives a salary from the company of $17,000 a month. Okay,
that's not. I mean, that seems about right. And by the way, Brad, this story is from the Missouri Independent.
Is that where it's from, Missouri Independent?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and this is the story that we discussed it was in my top 3 on Friday. So this story is syndicated by Missouri Independent. It's not St. Louis Public Radio reporting. It's by Jason Hancock of the Missouri Independent.
Okay, I know who he is. He's like the head dude at Missouri Independent, isn't he?
Correct. Yep,
okay.
That's right.
Okay. I say to you, it sounds like when you put together an extreme right-wing website, sounds very profitable to me. First off, if the company had $800,000 to loan to him, and they're paying him $17,000 a month, and he's driving around in, I'm driving around in a car that came to me on the back of a tow truck, which just last night I had to put a can and a half of R134A in the air conditioning because my air conditioning started to, peter out on me, so to speak. I'm thinking to myself, what's the magic formula this guy's got that he's making so much money? I mean, maybe we should learn from him. Maybe we should get the Riverfront Times dude, and we should get the KFNS people and go, okay, Jim, explain to us, how did you make all this money?
Yeah, so let's put it in terms of the corporate world. So Jim that comes to a little over $200,000 a year, which Jim would make if Jim said, "I'm done with politics. I want to go push paper at a generic Fortune 500 company." Jim could make $200,000 doing comms as a communicator at a Fortune 500.
But would anybody touch him though?
What's that?
I mean, would anybody touch him?
Oh, yeah, no, I get your point. But I just mean, I don't mean literally we're career managing for Jim Hoff. I'm just saying that like $200,000 for somebody that has skills and is a communicator, which no matter what you think of Jim Hoff, like he clearly understands media and messaging. Jim, if you're just looking at like $17,000 a month isn't that much. I guess that's my point. Now, if your point, Brad, is how does a company like the Gateway Pundit make money? I would say that they probably are pretty serious about analyzing their stats. I'd say they do a pretty good job selling advertising. Like that number of all the things in that story, that the fact that he's bringing in that kind of money is the least surprising. The fact that he's able to, call a Porsche Cayenne a company car, that's between him and the Alphabet Boys, I guess, him and the IRS. But I mean, I guess I'm nonplussed about the money aspect of it. I'm not surprised he's bringing in that much money.
Yeah, but see, my point is, okay, I understand what you're saying, but let's look at the Riverfront Times, okay? Now, and once again, what's the difference? And I know there's a vast difference between the Riverfront Times and the Gateway Pundit, but why is one publication obviously doing quite well if he's got, if his company has $800,000 in the bank that he can loan to, the company can loan to him personally, and and I know what you may say, $17,000 a month. Hey, look, sign me up for $17,000 a month, and you'll have to surgically remove the smile from my face. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah,
sure. And I think most people, if you
it's
said,
a good bit of money,
and we're going to pay you $17,000 a month, you go, whoa, man, yes. He wouldn't be going, well, that's
absolutely.
Average comms guy gets $17,000 a month. What I'm saying is, how is it that one guy can be super successful when it seems like everybody else is getting their butt kicked?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess here's the thing. I imagine that the folks that advertise that give the Gateway Pundit money for advertising, maybe you could make the argument that they're overpaying. In other words, maybe they're ideological groups that are sitting on a ton of money that can support Jim's version of journalism. You get what I'm saying? Like, he's not making that by running banner ads for Schnucks or trying to run a gimmick deal for a local restaurant. You get what I'm saying? Like, the Hawthorne Inn isn't advertising on the Gateway Pundit. I imagine there's a lot of ideological groups that have deep pockets that want to support Jim, and so they pay a lot of money for advertising.
So in other words, what you're saying is they're not paying for performance. They're not paying for results. They're just paying for the fact that, hey, we're going to support Jim.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, unless you have a look at a company's books, you don't really know.
Well, see, almost all of our advertisers, and you mentioned Hawthorne Inn, okay, if the ads for Hawthorne Inn weren't working for the Hawthorne Inn on our radio station, they wouldn't be on the air with us. And
they're gone. Absolutely.
Right. They're gone.
That's the free market, yeah.
Right. And I can tell you advertisers that have come and gone in our station because of the fact that I mean, and this is just advertising 101. I mean, there's a famous quote, who was it by? The guy who was J. Walter Thompson or something like that said that he made the comment about half of the advertising I do doesn't work, the other half does, and if I knew which from which before I started doing the advertising, I'd be a genius. The
Sure.
idea being is, is, you know this better than anybody, that, when you're in the corporate world, corporate, brings out a new product. Oh my God, this is going to be a great product. And the thing just dies. And then they've got some crappy product, which maybe we'll try to market it. And it turns out to be like a home run, Yeah. And through history of manufacturing and production and advertising, there's story after story after story about that. Probably one of the most famous ones in the car industry is Edsel, the car that was supposed to be, the huge success for Ford Motor Company turned out to be, a disaster. I mean, hold on a minute. I have these conversations with people. I can't attribute to who I was talking to, but last week I had the pleasure of meeting someone who was a retired Anheuser-Busch executive. And of course, everybody who talks to him's got to talk to him about Bud Light, and I'm no different. And he gave me a tremendously interesting insight into the whole Bud Light thing. Which is what? Well, the idea essentially was that the new owners have no idea, and they're not new owners anymore. They've been there, 10 years or something like that now. Yeah. The new owners still, maybe this was a wake-up call to them. They have no idea what they're doing, and they have this attitude, hey, we're InBev, we know everything. And he talks about person after person after person that left Anheuser-Busch. This particular person left. He didn't really know what was going to happen. He just decided he was going to retire and had done well with AB. Actually worked from the time he was a high school kid, working for the AB Anheuser-Busch companies, and retired before the buyout. And he told me something interesting that he said he's like you. He's a big Twitter guy. And he said that for 2 weeks before the Dylan Mulvaney thing happened, that the lady who they had put in there, who was the new brand manager for Bud Light, was, crowing all the time. I'm the first woman brand manager for Anheuser-Busch. And he says to the point where every time you open up his Twitter feed, there she is. I'm the first woman brand manager for Anheuser-Busch. And the idea being was she was so impressed. This is me saying this, but she was so impressed with the fact that she had broken the glass ceiling and she was this first woman manager, and then she made the huge mistake of going on a podcast and calling their advertising, it's aimed at frat boys and we're trying to get rid of that audience. That would be like saying, hey, you people that like Big Macs, we're McDonald's. You're all a bunch of jerks. We can't believe you eat these crappy Big Macs we make. They're terrible. You're going to gain weight. There's 9,000 calories in each.
Burger eaters.
Right. You're just a bunch of burger eaters, and we don't like you. Stay away from McDonald's. You go okay, what are they doing? Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
I do. And by the way, that could be something that my friend Brad Hildebrand taught me, which is don't let your head get too big for the room.
Well,
maybe she had read 1,000 posts from her fellow boss girls on LinkedIn about, I'm a businesswoman doing business. Look, I'm the first brand manager. And maybe that went to her head, Brad.
Well, I think that's probably what happened. Okay, John, we talked about this last week. The fact that, matter of fact, I got in trouble with someone because I dare mention the fact that during World War II, they produced 15,000 P-51 fighters in the course of 4 years, and 51 years later, they've only produced 1,200 F-15s. The idea being is that, which is...
Who would get mad about that?
I'm not going to say. Okay, so...
I bet I know. Go ahead.
I talk about the fact that we don't manufacture anything here in the United States, and then I see this story. The headline is, John Deere announces mass layoffs in Midwest amid production shift to Mexico. Now, who's to blame? You know who's to blame for this?
Let me see. Josh Hawley.
No, you.
Oh, thank you.
Do you know
I would love to take the credit or blame for this. I'm not short Deere, by the way. Ticker symbol DE. I am not short Deere, but going into the cycle, I probably should be. Go ahead.
Okay, you know why you're to blame?
Why is that?
Because you play the market. And what's happened in America?
I don't play the market, but your point is taken. Go ahead.
Well, no, you
play is for amateurs and people who don't know what they're doing. You're right, Brad. It's for Roaring Kitty who says GameStop's good. Let's buy a bunch of stock in that. Go ahead, though, Brad.
There are a lot of people that made a lot of money off of GameStop. Don't make fun of that.
They did. I was in GameStop early, but go ahead. And I was shorted until last week. Go ahead.
And cost headphones as well too, which is another one which nobody remembers. Which to the point where when I first got in the radio business, you weren't anything until you got yourself a pair of cost profitable A's, but that's a whole other story. Okay, my point being is if you read the financials of John Deere, they're not doing bad. Actually, they're doing well, okay? Sales are off some, but if you look at the bottom line, they're still making money. The problem is that, and this is why I mention you, the CEOs of the company are managing the companies quarter by quarter. And when they come out and you talk about the fact that who's the guys you listen to on a daily basis? Who's the guy?
I listen to Hedge Eye every day. Yeah.
Okay, every single day you're on that call and you're going like, oh, no, they're up 2.3%. I'm going to put my money there. The idea being is, who cares about what they do to the country? Who cares about the fact that they're going to move their production to Mexico and other places in South America? Who cares about the fact that all these skilled workers in Moline, Illinois, and other places like that, or maybe not Moline, I think it is Moline, that's right. John Deere's in Moline and Caterpillar's in Peoria. Who cares about all that kind of stuff? All that matters is bottom line, how's the stock doing? Because what they're doing is they're maximizing shareholder value so guys like John Combest can make money off the stock. But
yeah, and is there, I guess there, so first of all, let me quibble for a minute. Like, the call and the research that I take part in, that I listen to, does not track day-to-day stock fluctuations. So that's a stereotype and that's incorrect. But thanks for allowing me the opportunity to correct that. Secondly, delivering shareholder value on a long term is important for every company. And if a company manages expectations quarter to quarter, that's their own problem. I wouldn't want to invest in a company, Brad, that was obsessed with meeting their quarterly numbers. That's what Tesla does. That's why I'm aggressively short Tesla, which we've talked about on the show. This was not financial advice, but that's why I'm short Tesla, because Tesla manages their company quarter to quarter. Now, I can't speak to Deere because I'm neither long nor short Deere. And you're right, though, Brad. A company that manages, taking me out of this because that's superfluous, a company that manages their long-term expectations quarter to quarter and does their business plan quarter to quarter would be very poorly run. I can't say that that's the case with Deere. I mean, you obviously know a lot more about Deere than I do, based on your comments here. But if they're managing their company, I'm reading something from Hedge Eye here, announced a series of layoffs. Deere does do this periodically. Deere remains a short. So the call that I listen to, Brad, they've been short Deere for a while. So yes, you're right. We should give them credit. That's Jay Van Sciver at Hedge Eye. We should give them credit for anticipating this. Good plug, Brad.
Well, the point, here we go. Deere and Company's market capitalization stood around $1.2 billion as of Friday evening. This past Friday. In mid-May, the company said it generated $27.42 billion in net sales and revenues over the first 2 quarters of the year. Its net income from the same time frame was $4.121 billion. Okay, when they're saying net income, that means, isn't that essentially bottom line number when they're talking about net? When you when net income, that's the bottom line.
They're talking about what they're bringing in, yeah.
Well, but net income essentially is expenses minus
the cost,
minus revenue, okay? Revenue minus expenses, okay? So in other words, if you have $1 million in expenses and $2 million in revenue, you made $1 million. But yet net income. And that's not gross, but net means that's free of all other encumbrances as far as the things you pay, taxes and the whole bit. Isn't that what EBITDA is all about?
Yeah, what EBITDA is about. So, Brad, how does this compare to what's going on at Caterpillar? How does this compare to other industrials like New Holland makes a bunch of tractors? How does this compare to Cat and New Holland? Do you know?
Well, no. My problem is this. My problem is the fact that you have I'm a big picture kind of guy, okay? Once again, you listen to people like Mike Rowe. The point I brought up last week about, during World War II, we had this incredible production facility called the United States. We could manufacture all sorts of crazy stuff. And companies like IBM that made rifles and Rockola and all in Saginaw division of General Motors, they ceased making cars and they started making guns and stuff like that, okay? We don't have that production capability anymore. And You see it in people talking about, oh, I'm a school teacher. I only want to work 4 days a week. And, I don't want to go into the office anymore. Okay, guess what? The guys out in Wentzville, the guys and gals out in Wentzville don't make the General Motors products, the Canyons and the Colorados and the GMC Savannahs and things like that. They don't make them by sitting in their house,
You're dang right. They can't do that remote.
Being on a Zoom call. So, what's happened is, and you sometimes I see these things, people talk about, don't you hate when you have to go into the office? And I'm thinking to myself, tell that to the HVAC techs who are out fixing people's air conditioners today while they're outside where it's 100 degrees. Well, it won't be that way today.
Absolutely.
But the point being is that as we send more and more production to Mexico and other countries, we make our country less productive as far as if we need to all of a sudden crank up the war machine. Heaven forbid we do that. I know it would be a different war.
Can't we just order more planes from Boeing, Brad? I heard, according to some protesters, that's the way to go.
What?
Speaking of great work environments, when we come back, Brad, I have the journalismjobs.com listing for St. Louis Public Radio. It's 7:43.
Do you think could I apply, do you think?
Absolutely, you can. Tell them you want at least $17,000 a month, though.
And I want the Cayenne as my company vehicle.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?